Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mikhail Rostislavovich. I am the Vice President of the Waseca Area Chamber of Commerce and the Chair of our Legislative Committee. We hope that throughout this series, this is the second of our series, that you will enjoy hearing from the individuals who want to win your vote in the upcoming elections. Everyone here this evening must understand what a powerful tool debate is in our republic. It allows individuals to express their thoughts and opinions, engage in thoughtful discussions, and challenge the status quo. It encourages critical thinking, fosters intellectual growth, and promotes understanding and empathy. But a debate is not a format for attacks or slander. This debate's goal is not to prove someone wrong or claim victory, but to form an exchange of ideas between candidates and explore different perspectives. It is from the clash of opposing arguments that the voter can choose which candidate best represents their points of view and perspectives. So remember, the key to a successful debate is not to convince the opponent, but to persuade the audience to vote for you. I'm going to go over a few of the rules for the evening so that everyone is aware of them. Your moderator this evening is Eli, and he will ask each of you candidates multiple questions on a rotating basis. You will each have 1 1/2 minutes to respond. After you have answered the question proposed by the moderator, your opponent will be given 1 1/2 minutes to rebuttal if needed. The questions you are being asked have been put together by the members of the Chamber of Commerce Legislative Committee, some of whom are seated on the stage this evening. There will be 5 questions asked this evening during the first round of questioning. After the first round, we will recess for 10 minutes. Members of our assembly were given a question and a card to write whatever you would like to ask our candidates. Those questions will come up front. The panel will discuss them. 5 will be chosen. Our timer is Nathaniel this evening. He will keep track of the responses. After your 1 minute is up, the timer will raise a yellow card, signaling that you have 1/2 minute until the gavel is sounded and your microphone silenced. At any point during the question and answer period of this debate, if either of the candidates veers off the question, the moderator will interrupt you and bring you back to the question. Your time will not be yielded back. If you continue, the moderator will signal with a red card. If the moderator doesn't see it, I will signal with the red card, and again, your mics will be silenced. So I hope all of you enjoy this evening, and Eli, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mikhail. Good evening, gentlemen. Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Sexton, thank you for being here. My name is Eli Lutkins. I'm the publisher of the Waseca County Pioneer and a member of the Waseca Legislative Committee. Off to my right and left here are other members of the committee. We have Larry Johnson, Jamie Beckstrand, Ann Fitch, and Dwight Thossenson to my right. And off to my left, we have Mikhail. We have Stacy Schrader, Mr. Braden Hoof, and Mr. Hargith, County Commissioner. They'll be helping with questions in the intermission as well, and also we'll be asking some questions. Earlier this evening, we tossed a coin to determine which of you would be giving your opening statement first. Reminder, it's a 3-minute opening statement. And with that, we'll begin with Mr. Sexton. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. It's a very important event. It's my first debate. In addition, I would like to thank the Waseca Chamber of Commerce, Legislative Committee, and also the Waseca schools and the students who are here tonight. I'm very happy to see the students participate. Mr. Hargith and I were actually in 4th grade together, and we never thought we'd be in this event, so you have a future. Again, I'm Tom Sexton. I'm proudly married to Jean Sexton. We've been married for 38 years as of last September 12th. We have 2 adult sons, both of them are Air Force officers, both married, and we have 2 wonderful grandchildren. Unfortunately, we don't get to see them enough. Waseca is my family home. I have roots that go back all the way to the late 1800s. And early in the family, they farmed here in the north side of Waseca, and then they moved into town. And when my father was born, they moved out close to Clear Lake Park, where our family has been since 1931. I happened to be able to live here in Waseca until we moved up to Twin Cities back in the early 70s, so I have a good snapshot of what to expect in this area and how we could have grown and what we can do in the future to sort of bring growth back to Waseca, as well as all the areas like Owatonna, Medford, and all the areas of District 19B. I'm a veteran. I served in the Air Force for 26 years. After the Air Force, you can see in the resume, I served as a construction manager for Enbridge Energy, and then went down to Houston, Texas, and was vice president of construction management for a company called Universal Pegasus International. As you can also possibly see, I volunteered as soon as I retired again in 2021. I started with the Waseca Planning Commission, the City of Waseca Planning Commission. I'm the vice chair still. I'm also on the Waseca County Planning Commission. I'm the chairman of Lake Fest, our 4th of July celebration that we have down at Clear Lake Park. I've done that for the last 2 years and really enjoy it. I'm also a member of the Waseca American Legion Honor Guard, Knights of Columbus, Waseca VFW as a trustee, and the Lakes Association. I guess what I'm trying to say is public service and serving all of you is part of my DNA. And that's why I'm running for office, to continue serving and not just stay retired. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of things we can do better here in Minnesota. Some of those include supporting our families, improving our education. As always, we have a great education system here, and also improving on our aging infrastructure. I'd like to make sure that we preserve our family farms, strengthen our law enforcement, assist our veterans, as well as assisting our senior citizens who work so hard to bring Waseca what it is today, and also over in Owatonna, Medford, and the entire District 19B. My campaign is dedicated to security, prosperity, and unity. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Sexton. Mr. Fernandez, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So first and foremost, thank you so much for all of you for being here tonight. And I guess I'm going to just clear the air right now and address the elephant of the room. This might shock you, but I was not born in this country, right? So you may be looking for some subtitles here every once in a while. I'm sorry, I don't think those will be provided. My name is Edel Fernandez Mejia. You've probably seen the billboards on was Edel Fernandez. And it is my pleasure to be here with all of you tonight, Tom, and everybody else who is here on the stage, as well as all the folks that are across from where I am. Extremely happy to see the youth here. It's so important that you get involved in politics and you at least get to participate in the upcoming election. 20-some years ago, I met a young lady in my hometown of Guanajuato in Mexico who went there to learn Spanish. And I guess she was convinced that she needed to bring back a souvenir. And so I just celebrated my 24th year living in Minnesota this past September. I have a background in communications and public relations from Universidad Santa Fe, as well as a minor in administration with emphasis in tourism. So I am familiar with some of the needs of the communities that can help grow and make a community stand out from others. I do live in Owatonna. I've been in Owatonna for the last 13 years because of work. I am currently the director of admissions at South Central College, and I have been working in higher education for the last 20 years or more, both in Mexico and United States. My 3 children, 20, 16, and recently turned 13, live in Faribault with their mom, and I get to see them often. So I am very familiar with a one-person income household. So one of the reasons why I'm running is because I think that some of the people who may be sitting in front of us tonight may be facing some of the same challenges that I have seen for the last few years. When I became a resident of Owatonna, one of my first questions was, I wonder why we don't have a lot of representation of people of color at the table. And so you can just about imagine that when somebody approached me and asked me if I would run, I had no choice but to say yes, right? My hope is to represent and to give a voice to those who have somehow lived in the shadows of our communities, and to make sure that everybody has a level playing field for advancing and making these communities that we are supposed to serve, Waseca, Owatonna, and Medford, a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. This first question is going to be for you, and a reminder, you'll have a minute and a half to respond, and after Tom gives his response, you'll have an opportunity for rebuttal if you would like. There still seems to be a huge discrepancy between outstate funding versus metro funding when it comes to both education and bonding bills and infrastructure projects. What solutions can you offer to make state funding more equitable for greater Minnesota?
That is a great question. So I know, like I said earlier, I work in higher education. And so one of the things that I have seen that is coming, that just started this fall is, and perhaps you have heard about the North Star Promise, that is supposed to bring alleviate some of the expanding needs of the students trying to go to college. I also know that the state of Minnesota currently has invested a lot of money into broadband, as well as the farming business and agriculture. There's a need for all of us here in these communities to be able to benefit from those pieces of budget that are coming from the state. So when I'm in office, I'm going to make sure that our voices here in this area in District 19B are heard, because I feel like that is the main reason why I'm sitting here in front of you, to be able to serve all of you here and bring our needs up to the state. I want to make sure that they are aware of the shared values that we have in southern Minnesota and how we need their support.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Mr. Sexton, I'll repeat the question for you. There seems to still be a huge discrepancy between outstate funding versus metro funding when it comes to both education and bonding bills and infrastructure projects. What solutions can you offer to make state funding more equitable for greater Minnesota?
Thank you for that question. So let's start with education. The legislature passed $2.2 billion surplus, part of the surplus, to push towards education. However, the Department of Education shaved off the first $500 million to build their empire up in St. Paul. Somewhere along the line, we have forgot what the I in ISD stands for. It stands for independent. And all of a sudden, we've got that whole group of politicians and state people up in St. Paul making all these decisions and pushing down these mandates. Some come with money, some do not. And then when they do not, they're still mandates. They're called unfunded mandates that are really forcing our superintendents and principals and leaders to figure out how to pay for them. So that's just the education part. We need to get the independence back in independent school district. As far as bonding, we should have had a bonding bill in 2024. It comes up every 2 years. So the bonding bill allows us to borrow money with the state saying, yep, you can borrow it, and we'll make sure you're able to pay it back. It's almost like the collateral. So that allows us to do infrastructure projects like we see here in Waseca. We're trying to correct our inflow and infiltration problems into our sewage system. But because they didn't have a bonding bill, we need to postpone those projects, and we're going to have to compete against more and more projects the more often these bonding bills get pushed back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sexton. Mr. Fernandez, would you care to rebuttal?
Yeah, so I would like to just make a comment that our government has invested about $2.3 million into public education. If you remember, a few years ago, we went through a very large pandemic, and we were able to send our students home, and those who did not have access to the internet were given the opportunity to have broadband from home. We also spend a large amount of money in making sure that our students are fed, because not everybody had, unfortunately, that opportunity. We do have a food insecurity issue in education. We also expanded access to mental health resources for students, which also as a result of that COVID pandemic that we lived through. And all overall investments to improve childhood reading and literacy were also the result of some of the funding when it comes to education. I already mentioned some of the things that the DFL under Governor Walz accomplished with investing about $100 million in rural broadband in this area, which is what we're talking about.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, anything more from you?
Certainly. Well, first of all, broadband is actually funded through the ag side. and there was a special a portion of that. So that's not part of the education fund. The argument I continue to make is that $500 million that went to expanding the Department of Education could have actually been better spent down at the independent school districts for us and our staff here who knows best what our students need to support them, rather than bureaucrats up in St. Paul.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to question number 2. And Tom, this one will be for you first. And Mr. Brian Hargith from our panel off to my left here will get to ask the question.
Thank you. Good evening, candidates. Given that both communities you will serve face significant challenges related to wastewater management and its impact on our local waterways, what strategies do you plan to implement to address these issues?
Certainly, we've already talked about the bonding bill. So the details of the bonding bill is it got to the Senate near midnight. It wasn't passed till after midnight, and then through that technicality, it didn't go through. So that postponed a lot of availability of funds that could have been released. Us, our taxpayers, being able to use our funds and backed up by the state with the bonding bill to address these wastewater issues. And it's a huge problem. Another thing that you're going to see is the opportunity to vote for a particular budget. It's the environmental budget. It's on the ballot this time. One thing you should know, though, is if you vote yes, you're going to cut off about 5% of that fund that could be used for wastewater. That fund is actually monitored based on its original legislation by the legislators. If you vote yes on the ballot for that particular issue, that fund will now be managed by the DNR, and they will cut those type of funding lines and push it off to other things. I encourage everybody to get more details. Be happy to point you in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, I'll repeat the question for you. Given that both communities you will serve face significant challenges related to wastewater management and its impact on our local waterways, what strategies do you plan to implement to address these issues?
That is an excellent question, and we're talking about the vital liquid, right? We cannot live without it, of course, and I think that all cities play a very important role in protecting Minnesota's waters. We know that the city of Medford is right now partnering with the city of Owatonna to create a treatment, water treatment, and so we need to make sure that we do everything that we can to protect our waters. We know that the environment is a very important thing for us and for our future. So with the help of the other legislators when we are in office, again, this is something that is prevalent and very important for us to address. I do think that there's a couple ways to come up with a solution, but this is really not the job of one group of individuals, but the whole group of community and constituents of this District 19B. One of the things that I alluded to earlier is that we need to hear from you, and because we, as representatives of this district, need to bring those issues to the Capitol and make sure that those issues are addressed. And again, we all play a very important role in that.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton.
So one of the things I hope, if elected, to bring to the legislature is the fact that I've got that heavy construction experience, pipeline experience, and one of the things that I could do would be to try and get on the Capital Investment Committee that takes care of all of that bonding to fight for those issues for Southern Minnesota at the committee and subcommittee levels.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, anything more?
Same thing. So same thing. We need to make sure that we are at the right place at the right time to make sure that a change can happen. That we can make a difference.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Fernandez, this third question will be for you. How do you propose to get funding for rural emergency medical services and the challenges being faced?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Oh, yep. How do you propose to get funding for rural emergency medical services and the challenges being faced, i.e. not enough funding, declining staff, and outdated equipment? Emergency funding was denied during the last session. Instead, a new state government EMS agency was created, which spends money on government, not on funding to help the rural emergency medical services. Again, how do you propose to get funding for rural emergency medical services?
That is imperative that we do something about it. Something that I would like to share real quick is that 4 years ago, I was drowning in a lake close to Faribault. And this was the 4th of July. And something that I'm extremely grateful for is all those people who were trained, EMTs, paramedics, nurses, who on their day off, when they're there to enjoy the holiday, jumped to save my life. I wouldn't be here without them. So they deserve all the respect from anybody sitting at this table, in this facility, and we definitely need to protect them. I know right now the state has a special scholarship for anybody who wants to become a paramedic, and so more of that funding needs to be spread out through all the health sciences. And of course, these men and women who put their risk and their lives out there, regardless of who you are, where you come from, or what your personal beliefs are to be commended. So protection for all of them for sure.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, how do you propose to get more funding for rural emergency medical services?
So it's a very important topic, especially for us, but it's especially important in northern Minnesota, where it's much more rural, and we have a lot of visitors and things like that. So part of the problem is Medicare and a lot of the other federal programs are not reimbursing these medical services like they should be. And so we need, as a state, working through even our federal representatives to see if we can up that amount for that, as well as look for state funding to pay for that as well. It's essential that we retain these services and support our public safety professionals across the board.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, anything more you'd like to add?
Yeah, so we currently have done something in regards to public health and safety by the ban of the use of cell phone while you're driving. That's one of the things that can help towards making sure that everybody is protected on the roads, and therefore those services that we're talking about may not be as needed as they could be. I know that $300 million were provided for public safety that are needed to combat crime. Again, this is a full picture of how those people who have the training can be used when really when they are needed. So there won't be so many things that they have to worry about. Again, I am very confident that, and I feel very strongly about making sure that these folks have the incentives that they need, the respect that they need, and of course, we as government or as members of legislation need to make sure that that happens.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton.
So I believe some of the funding that was pushed towards improving that was also one-time funding. And that's a concern with our budgets. We need to make sure that when we provide funding, we don't create expectations by doing one-time funding. One of the programs that was started, and what I'm hearing feedback on, was sort of an advanced, smaller rig to go out and validate what was really needed as the ambulance followed. My understanding is the trial is not going very well for that. So at least they tried that, and now they're trying other things. But again, this needs to be funded. It needs to be funded with more than 1 year funding out of some excess that was there.
Thank you. All right. With that, we'll go to question number 4, and we'll throw it back to our panel. Waseca Senior Braden Hoof will introduce the next question, and it'll be for Mr. Sexton.
As Eli said, my name is Braden Hoof, and my question is, what are your top 3 policy priorities for your upcoming term?
So, if I haven't hinted enough, the budget and taxes. Before we had the surplus, the $17.8 billion surplus that was spent rather than being given back to the taxpayers when we needed it most coming out of COVID, we had a budget of about $55 billion. Now, because we've spent that money, we've built government, we've created expectations, our baseline budget is up around $70 billion. That's an incredible amount of money. So, the previous legislators also raised taxes, raised fees, and created more government with another $10 billion worth of fees. So that's one of my biggest priorities, is get that back under control, figure out what's essential, and see if we can get more out of the Twin Cities back out here and reduce government. Second, public safety. We are 1,000 officers short across the state in police and peace officers. 2,400 additional officers will be retirement eligible in the next 24 months. Add those two numbers up, and that is a third of our force. The legislature will go in and likely grant some sort of Band-Aid and actually create and ask officers to stay 5 years longer and still pay them their retirement concurrently with their regular pay. But what we really need to do is fix the entry program. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Fernandez, again, what are your top 3 policy priorities for your upcoming term?
One of the things that I hear Mr. Sexton say is talk about taxes, and taxes always makes it controversial. It's not so much what we are gaining in taxes, but what are those taxes being spent on? Again, we have to keep in mind that through some of the taxes that we pay, and again, believe me, I'm not necessarily a fan of having to pay taxes every time that you do just about anything, but they're important. Our cities, our communities live. The city of Waseca couldn't do anything if we didn't have any taxes. So what are those taxes doing for our communities is what I'm concerned about, or what would be important to know. About 80% of the people who probably are here tonight are between the first 4 brackets of taxation, and with the highest tax being 10.9% for anybody making up to $100,000 a year, or up to $400,000 a year. Now, when the last 2, the highest incomes, well, they pay also an amount of taxes that is significant. You cannot compare one to the other. If I make $100,000 a year, I'm going to be pay about $76,000. No, I'm sorry, about $2,000 in taxes. But if I make $730,000 a year, I pay $76,000, and I still have a big surplus to live on.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, you'll get another minute and a half. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll finish point 3. We've already discussed it. Capital investment, that's the bonding portion. We really need that money to come down to our cities in the rural area to allow us to improve our water and wastewater areas and work on our roads. Absolutely need it. Going back to the taxes a little bit, we just have got to stop growing government. I've been in government a lot of my really service to our nation and everything else. And the more government we grow, the more people are making PowerPoint slides and just pushing around data within a headquarters up in St. Paul. We need those funds to come out to the rural area, and that's what I'm going to focus on, and that's a good reason, the biggest reason I'm running for this office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, minute and a half for you.
Yes, back to the taxes. I think that we need to find a balance between those who continue benefiting from tax breaks and all, and those who really need it the most. I know that our businesses in our areas that we are covering could benefit from a reform, could benefit from something that is going to encourage them to continue keeping the doors open. So while we do need to find a balance, again, nobody likes to pay taxes, but it's a necessary evil, if you would. So we just need to find a good way to have a balance that is going to help rural Minnesota grow with the support from the government.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move to question number 5. Mr. Fernandez, this one will start with you. Last session, the state of Minnesota carried a nearly $18 billion surplus, yet lawmakers raised taxes and increased spending. Why are Minnesotans continually overtaxed?
Well, why Minnesota?
Why are Minnesotans continually overtaxed with the state government carrying a surplus every single year?
Right. Once again, we come back to the taxes, which is, again, a topic that nobody likes to talk about. Look at this facility. This was built on some of the taxations that we paid for here in the city. The inflation is a very complicated issue. It's very difficult to really fully understand for the normal, and I quote, normal citizens or residents. So it is important that people get more educated. My hope is that when people at the Capitol are making these decisions, that there's more transparency and clarity for everybody as to why the decisions are made. Because sometimes it feels like they hide behind closed doors and they make decisions without really thinking or keeping in mind all of us here tonight. So it's important that we have clarity, that we have transparency, and that the decisions that are made are well balanced between a metro area and, of course, the areas that need it the most, perhaps like rural Minnesota and District 19B.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, why do we continue to be overtaxed?
That is a great question, something I want to address if elected. If you don't know this, we are the #1 state in corporate taxes. We have the highest tax rate. It's a marginal tax rate of 9.8%. We even beat Illinois. So what are we hearing from all the people who have built their businesses here? Yep, we'll keep the headquarters here in Minnesota, as we've seen with a lot of businesses. But if we're going to expand someplace else that's more tax friendly. And that's not going to help us in the long run. We need to look beyond 1 year after year, tax and spend, tax and spend. We're also looking at a $4.1 billion deficit in 2026. That's what the Office of Legislative Auditors are telling us. They're an independent agency. We absolutely have got to get control of the budget, figure out what exactly is essential, and focus on those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez?
It is, like I said earlier, it is something that we definitely need to do something about. We, through the transparency and through the legislature that we are to put in place, I think that this is a bipartisan issue. It's not just a one-party issue, and we need to come up with a consensus and some agreement that we need to look after the residents and the constituents of this district, as opposed to the personal interest of some folks.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton?
Mr. Fernandez mentioned earlier that this facility was built with taxes. It was built with bonding using local taxes. That's where we need to get our focus is on what we can do locally to spend the money that we raise here and not send it all off to St. Paul. So we need to focus on that. They're also talking about raising and adding another tax bracket that's higher, targeting people who are making more money. But we continue to do that. We actually snuck in, I say we because we're all one state. If you were in one of the higher, or could have been in one of the higher tax brackets, they changed your deduction so you didn't deduct as much rather than create another tax bracket. So we've got to quit messing around. We've got to stop spending money. We've got to let the people who can invest in the communities invest in the communities. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll break for an intermission. Miguel?
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, if you look in your programs, there is a card, and we would ask that you create a question that you would like to ask our candidates. I am going to send Larry and Jamie out to pick up your questions, and then the panel will meet and pick 5 of those questions. Thank you. There will be a brief 10-minute recess. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the debate. Panel, please take your seats. Our moderator has been given the questions. Thank you all for the questions. They were selected, and we'll continue on with the debate. Candidates?
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, this first question will be from you, and a reminder, these come from the audience. So this audience member says their opinion is that the greatest threat to our state and nation is divisive politics. Should we expect you to be a representative who reaches across party lines to work for the benefit of all your constituents, or a representative that votes along party lines and makes disparaging remarks about the opposite party?
Thank you for asking that question. One of the things that I've learned from the folks that I visited with when I'm out there door knocking is that they are sick and tired of the polarization between the two parties. Perhaps those of you who have seen my billboards have noticed that my working campaign is working together, winning together. It is imperative that we stop looking at our differences and that we create this place a better place to live. I definitely will reach out to try to have some compromise between both parties to come up and again to forget about the division between the two parties and the polarization between the two and concentrate, put our efforts back on the constituents of this community of District 19B. It is something that is loud and clear. Many of you have experienced that already, and I think that it's for sure something that I strongly believe in, working together. And when I'm in St. Paul, I will make sure to bring our shared Southern Minnesota values to the Capitol.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, I'll repeat the question. Should we expect you to be a representative who reaches across party lines to work for the benefit of all your constituents, or a representative that votes along party lines and makes disparaging remarks about the opposite party?
Well, I never make disparaging remarks, so thank you. So absolutely. And like Mr. Fernandez says, he's been out door knocking. I've been door knocking in a lot of places. That is the number one feedback item I'm getting is figure out a way to get along. Unfortunately, and maybe the media can help us with this, a lot of times it's framed as if you compromise, you actually are giving up something which is seen as losing. We need to change and reframe that and look for wins that are mutual wins because we need to support each other. We're one state. That's why I said unity is one of my focus items within my campaign. We need to unify and move forward and make sure that we do it as one Minnesota.
Mr. Fernandez, anything you'd like to add?
Just again, I agree with Mr. Sexton. I think that all of us here sitting tonight are in agreement that the moment we start looking at what things we have in common and stop addressing the things that set us apart, this community and this district is going to be a better place to live in for us and for those who come.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, anything you'd like to add?
All I can say is in my past, I taught at the Army War College where we had 80 students from other nations, and I learned a lot from them in each one of my seminars. And not only are we compromising, but we're making things work together. That's what partners do, and that's where we have to figure out how we can create partnerships amongst different things. Mr. Fernandez and I are violently agreeing on this issue. The only way we can move forward is with compromise.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, we'll move to the second audience question, which is, what is your view on the abortion ban and regulation being controlled by the state?
You said abortion ban?
Yeah, what are your views on the abortion issue and the regulation by the state?
Okay, I thought I heard abortion ban because that's not what we have here in Minnesota, obviously. So I'm unashamedly pro-life. So I am very concerned about the abortion issue personally. Do I think I'm going to change the law when I go up to work in St. Paul? No. However, there is a program called the Positive Alternatives Act that was initiated back in 2005. And what this program did is it helped fund pregnancy centers from the state so that they could help mothers who choose to actually have their baby. In the 2023 session, funding for that program was zeroed out. I would like to work as one of my top items once I get up there to see if we can get that funding restored. Because what that does is it actually restores choice. If a mother actually has the opportunity, if she chooses to do so, to bring a baby to full term and maybe give it up for adoption or keep it, let's give her that choice. But because we've reduced the money to zero, we don't have the opportunity to give her that choice. So I want to focus on that. It's a small amount of money compared to everything else we're spending.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, what are your opinions on the abortion issue and regulation being controlled by the state?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it seems that it always comes down to this question. And something that I want to make sure that people understand is that the DFL, we are not pro-abortion. We are pro-choice, which means that we need to give the power to the women, in this case, who are considering taking that extreme step. I promise you that nobody in this room would willingly, out of the blue, decide to end a life. What I do believe is that abortion should be rare, accessible, and safe. And again, give the power back to the people who need to make a decision. I know that we have, as the current government has given reproductive freedom for all Minnesotans. So we need to make sure that those people who are making those decisions are not putting more lives in danger by having to cross onto other states or look for different options from home that are not going to be good for anybody. So while I do understand that some people have to make that decision, I want to make sure that those folks are still protected.
Mr. Sexton?
So, leveraging a little bit of Mr. Fernandez's point about being safe, our governor passed a law, once it was passed through the DFL legislature, to pull abortions out of hospitals where it was safer to do in case there's complications. If anything, we should restore moving those back, if we have to do it at all, into hospitals to make sure that it's absolutely safe for the mother and everybody concerned.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, anything you'd like to add?
Again, rare, accessible, and safe for all.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Fernandez, this third question, I'll start with you. Should Social Security income be taxed?
Should Social Security income be taxed? Well, I know that we are currently in a state that our senior citizens who are receiving Social Security number are not having to pay any taxes, and so that is, if I could have it my way, I would definitely remove that tax from people who are receiving Social Security number, Social Security. Those folks who are already who put in their time are not becoming rich off of what little or much they are receiving. So the more we can help them, the better we will be. So no.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, should Social Security income be taxed?
Absolutely not. So, a little history. The Republicans had an agreement with the Democrats to take taxing of Social Security, or basically implement no Social Security taxing. That promise was reneged, unfortunately. Our seniors are some of our most important assets. We look around, they're on a fixed income. When a lot of these decisions were made, inflation wasn't as bad as it is now. So I'm sure they're having to say no to certain things that they used to do. I hope they can make rent. I hope they can pay their utilities. I hope they can live like they wanted to live in their retirement years. But I'm very concerned as we continue to tax, even Social Security is not going to be enough. So no, we should not tax Social Security and keep our seniors in Minnesota.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez.
Like I mentioned, so right now in the state of Minnesota, fully exempted state taxes on Social Security for more than 3/4 of seniors. It's a fact. That's happening, and it needs to continue to be that way.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, anything more you'd like to add?
As we talked in the break, it was a little hard to hear your answer, Edel. So I'm not sure exactly what the rebuttal was, but I'll make my point. We do not need to we're not making that much money, if that's the way that's looked at, from our seniors. Let's not tax them. They've already paid enough. They've actually created what we have here in Minnesota. It's a great lifestyle. Let them enjoy it in their senior years.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Sexton, this fourth question, I'll start with you. After talking to voters during your campaign, what have you heard are the issues they are most concerned about?
Well, certainly the economy. Inflation is hitting them hard, combined with these taxes and everything else. They're not sure where we're going. I'm looking and I'm seeing that the economy is slowing down, and we need to be concerned about that. The stock market, as one of the indicators, is all over the place. So we need to do whatever we can to stabilize the economy. And part of that is above us in Minnesota. But if we can make it easier for our citizens by not taxing them so much to actually save money and spend it where it should be spent on their own families, I'm all for that. Other things that we can be concerned about, we have a mental health crisis. And I'm hearing that as I do the ride-alongs with all of our sheriff departments and police departments. They're being pulled in as public safety to these mental health issues. We had a sheriff over in another county that is west of us say 70% of the residents of his jail are there for mental health reasons, not for criminal reasons. So we need to find a better way of addressing the mental health issues and not depend so much on our public safety professionals. And finally, we've spent a lot of time on education, but that is one of my biggest concerns, and I will be addressing that if elected to go up to the legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, after talking to voters during your campaign, what have you heard of the issues they are most concerned about?
That is what has me here tonight. I know that some of my constituents are worried about making ends meet. They're also worried about housing. I think it's an issue that affects many of those folks who live in this area. We see apartment buildings coming up and down, coming up all over the place. And while it's a temporary patching to the solution of housing, I fear that it does not provide an opportunity to young families, new Americans, and people who need to establish their roots in this district, an opportunity to be there. So housing is one of the things that I've heard the most. Access to services like healthcare and other services in the area, education. We are living in a country, in a place where we have an aging population, and I know small business are worried about who is going to take over. That's why I'm so excited to see some young people here sitting in front of us, because I think that is important and it's imperative that they act upon this and take advantage of this opportunity that lays in front of them.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, anything you'd like to add?
Certainly the economy is related to housing. It's related to healthcare. And people are having to make tough choices. And it's a huge concern. And we've got to make sure that the economy is moving forward and all people are working if they're able to work. And that will help bring in more opportunities for everybody else.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez?
Like I said, we live in a community that has an aging population. And so we need people in this state that are going to be able to take over those folks who are retiring. And some folks that are coming from other parts of the world, we need to make sure that those folks are being trained and they have access to the education and the resources that they need in order for them to take over some of those who are retiring or moving to a different place because we can't find the things that we're looking for in this area. So I'm very grateful that people are asking that question, because that is loud and clear in almost every single person that I visited with during the last few months.
Thank you. All right, our final audience submitted question is a little bit on a lighter note. Mr. Fernandez, this one's for you. Do you favor the elimination of daylight savings time?
Do I favor the elimination of what?
Daylight savings time. Should we get rid of daylight savings time?
Actually, I would. A couple weeks ago, I got stranded due to a hurricane in Mexico, and they got rid of daylight savings. So I don't necessarily see the logic behind it, in the sense that, yes, you're waking up an hour earlier, but then you're turning the light on later in the night. So it's something that was in place many, many years ago to benefit a rural community and in agriculture, which is great. But there's other things that we can do to prevent the usage of electricity and other things that we need to consider. So yes, I definitely am in favor of eliminating daylight savings.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton, do you favor the elimination of daylight savings time?
When I was in the pipeline industry, we actually saw that as a day and the next 2 days after is some of our highest risks from a safety perspective. So we did additional mitigation things like bring people in later, make sure that they can get their clock adjusted, warn people to be careful when they're driving because other people are not watching as much and are not attentive. So potentially that could be a good idea. Of course, it has other effects. So we need to look at the entire problem before we make decisions. If it was an easy decision for easy reasons, we would have eliminated it many, many years ago, but we have not. So other places like Florida have voted to do it. They've just got to wait for the U.S. government at that level to make the decision to allow them to do it. Somehow Arizona was able to keep what they have, and not chase daylight savings time, but all the rest of the states are needing to follow the federal government.
Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, anything more on daylight savings time?
Again, I think that in my experience as a soccer referee, every time you blow the whistle, 50% of the people who are there are going to be mad at you. So anytime you make a decision like this, we know that we're not going to be able to please everybody. So I am in favor of eliminating daylight savings time. But again, if there's a strong reason as to why we shouldn't, I'm more than willing to listen to it.
Thank you. Mr. Sexton?
Nothing further on that issue.
Thank you. With that, we'll move into the 3-minute closing statement. Tom, you went first, giving your opening statement, excuse me. So, Mr. Fernandez, you'll go first in your closing statement. Again, you have 3 minutes.
Am I going first? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So, again, I just wanna thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to express myself and tell you one of the reasons why I'm running and why you should vote for me. Earlier tonight, I heard somebody mentioning challenging the status quo. And I think that having somebody that does not look like the rest of the government, it's a good way to move forward in the direction that this country should be moving forward. I think that there are many people in our communities that look more like me that feel intimidated in the current state of affairs of the government. And they are afraid of speaking up, and they don't see themselves being represented. So if given the opportunity, my job is to bring the shared Southern Minnesota values to St. Paul. I want to make sure that we are able to work across the aisle and have a compromise that is going to benefit the constituents of District 19B. Because when we work together, we win together. We already know that we all do better when we all do better. And again, I am as a parent of biracial, bicultural, bilingual children, I fear for them. I know that sometimes they feel intimidated by their peers because of the way they look, because of the way they sound. And this community, just like the rest of the country, we would not be where we are today if it weren't for immigrants that came to this country many, many years ago. At some point in our lives, somebody came from a different country, from just about anybody who is sitting here tonight. We need to embrace those folks. We need to give them the opportunity to eventually, someday, just like me, who never had the idea that I would be ever standing in front of you talking about the future as a politician, empower them and give them an opportunity to be able to let them dream. Somebody mentioned to me once, you are the true example of the American dream. And I'm flattered by that. I'm honored by that. So I want to make sure that those are the values that I can bring with me and represent all of you here tonight at the state capitol.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Mr. Sexton, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank the Waseca Schools and the Waseca Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring and facilitating this event and getting the word out. Also, I want to welcome Edel to Waseca, and thank you for coming over and participating in the event as well. We actually had the opportunity to sit next to each other in an event. Had a great conversation, so nice gentlemen, thank you. It's really very heartening to see how many students are here. We just talked before. We were in 4th grade together, and look where we are now. We have got to use your resources, whether you believe it or not, to continue participating in these kind of events, helping us see the future and helping us grow the state of Minnesota. This state is a state I love. I was off in the Air Force for a lot of years, got to go a lot of places and do a lot of things, but I worked really hard to get back here to participate in living in Waseca, living in southern Minnesota, and now I'm basically putting my foot forward to see if I can continue the work to help grow this area, which is so important to me and my family. Thank you so much for your participation, and thank you so much for what you're going to do for us in the future. Have a great night.
All right. That concludes the debate tonight. Thank you, candidates, for participating. Thank you to the Waseca Area Chamber of Commerce and Waseca Public Schools for hosting. And thank you to our timekeepers and the members of the panel. And thank you for everyone else who made tonight possible. Oh, and a reminder, the debates will be online on the Waseca Public Schools website, the Chamber of Commerce, and also on the Public Access channel. Again, thank you for your support of Waseca Votes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps it up this evening. Those of you that are in the press, we're going to have a group shot with Mr. Fernandez and Mr. Sexton and the panel. So thank you again for participating.